Folk, when you go back and you look at this, what he's saying in the night time, you don't know who it is. But in the daytime, you can identify him. So you don't have the right to kill him in the daytime because you can identify him. You take him to the judges and deal with it that way. If it happens in the night time, you can't identify him. You have to defend yourself and protect yourself. So let's have a look at verse 6 of 22. It says, if a fire breaks out and spreads into thorn bushes, so that it burns shocks of grain or standing grain or the whole field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. Isn't that the same today? I've been on the farm. I remember one fellow was harvesting on Christmas Day and started a fire, and it's a no-no in West Australia. I don't know about here. You are not allowed to harvest on Christmas Day. And he was up for thousands and thousands of dollars of remuneration. These principles are principles that we today use in our relationships and our laws with one another. And I forgot to keep pressing the buttons. So when you look at these things, we realise that what God asked Moses to write down was beneficial to his people. But some silly things are happening today. I don't know whether you heard a little while back where a woman had a child running wild in the store, and the child ran into a lane and tripped her, and she fell over and hurt herself. And she sued the store and got money from the store for falling over. You know, justice to me gone wrong. And the other one that took my eye was a woman who spilled her coffee on the floor in McDonald's. And when she got up to leave, she slipped in the coffee and then sued McDonald's, so she won the case. You know, sometimes we wonder where the common sense has gone. But there are some, as I said this morning, some 35 million laws they believe around the world just simply to enforce the Ten Commandments. So when you think about this, the laws that Moses wrote here, it's interesting reading to read through this. I've only just given you some examples. When you've got some time, have a read through some of these chapters and just see the principles that they lived by back then. I want to have a look at another set of laws, and these are the health laws. Leviticus talks about health in a big way, and it gives us a lot of instruction. These laws were given to God's people to benefit them, to help them with their health, to live by purification, regulate, cleansing from infectious diseases. And there were regulations about mildew. What do you think mildew might be? We know what we call mildew today. We don't see a lot of it. But what was it meaning back then? It meant leprosy. Leprosy. Yeah, leprosy. And we don't see leprosy today. I mean, they do a little bit in the islands, but we don't see it. But it was a disease that was amongst them back there. And health is an area that the Bible has a lot to talk or say about. And it gives us good instruction. I just want to ask you, when do you think these health laws came into being? How many years ago? About, sorry?
The beginning. Or at the beginning,
Well, that's probably true, actually. They weren't written down right at the beginning, but Adam and Eve, they had a healthy diet. They had to eat fruits, grains and nuts, didn't they? And I guess God told them about what they needed to do to keep the Garden of Eden nice and clean and all of that. But the Bible has a lot to say about it. Moses was the first person to actually put pen to paper 1,500 years before Jesus and start writing these things down. I want you to have a look here at this text that says, the Lord said to Moses, command the Israelites to send away from the camp anyone who has an infectious skin disease or a discharge of any kind. Send away male and female alike and send them outside the camp. Folk, what would we call that today? Yeah, quarantine. That's exactly what we do today, isn't it? We have an infectious diseases ward. It's a quarantine ward in the hospital. If somebody has something they don't know what it is, they quarantine them. They put them away until they can work it out. Let's have a look at, just let me say one thing here. With the quarantine, we had a camp, we believe, with about 3 million Hebrew people, and they believe there are about 2 million other Egyptians with them. So there's about 5 million people there. You couldn't just duck behind the tent to answer a call of nature, could you? With that many people in that area. And so Moses had to write down these things that were going to keep them healthy and safe from disease. Have a look at this verse. It says, gold and silver, iron and lead and anything else that can withstand fire must be put through the fire and then it will be clean, but it must also be purified with the water of cleansing, and whatever cannot withstand the fire must be put through that water. You know, this at first this seems a little bit obscure, you know, what it's talking about, but what would we call that today? Yes, sterilisation. That's exactly what we do, isn't it? We sterilise things. You go to a dentist, you go to a doctor, all the instruments he uses are sterilised. They put through hot fire, or not necessarily fire, but very hot water, and they sterilise them and clean them. I want to share one more thing with you. This is the Lord talking to Moses, all right? He said, say to the Israelites, do not eat any of the fat of cattle, sheep or goats. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. Wherever you live, you must not eat any fat. Now, he didn't say, look, it's just for the Jews. He said it's for a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. What have they discovered today? Don't eat too much fat. It's better to have lean meat. It's the way that things have gone. We have really caught up with what Moses said all those years ago, that fat is not good for you. And so these instructions have been handed down to us from Moses. You know, some people say that God had nothing to do with it, that Moses just wrote down the things that were happening around him at the time, and the very things that the nations were doing. He just wrote them down and put them in a book. Let me share with you, a few years ago, a medical book was found in Egypt dating back to 1500 BC. It was in one of the tombs that they opened, and it's the most important medical papyrus yet discovered because it contains the most complete record of Egyptian medicine. And Darren actually has a copy, or translated copy of this book. And I can read it for a little while and then it gets so gruesome I have to stop. But let me just share with you. It's called the Papyrus Eddas. This is a picture of one of the pages in it, and it's the oldest preserved document, and it has something like 700 magical formulas and folk remedies and things like that for healing. And it uses such things ranging from crocodile bite, or remedies for crocodile bite to toenail pain, and to rid the house of such pests as flies, rats and scorpions. For example, if you had an embedded splinter, you were to apply worm's blood and ass's dung. And I guess since the dung was loaded with tetanus, lockjaw would have been rampant back then. But there were several hundred remedies listed in the book, and these included lizard's blood, swine's teeth, putrid meat, stinking fat, moisture from pig's ears, ass's hooves, excretia from most of the animals, and cats and even flies. And I just want to quote to you one of the remedies here, and I've just taken this straight out of the book, so I haven't adapted it or done anything. It says, a large beetle, cut off his head and 2 wings, warm him, put him into fat and apply him. If you then wish to drive it away, and that's the disease, warm his head and his 2 wings, put it into snake fat, warm it and drink it. Folk, why is this relevant? Moses lived in Egypt. He would have been up to date with the current Egypt medicines. He would have known what they did. Can you imagine what the Bible would say, or how it would be ridiculed today if Moses had written down what was written in this medical book back in Egypt?